There comes a point in motherhood where the very things that made you a good mom are the things that can destroy your relationship with your teenager later on. This final phase of parenting requires you to become a completely different kind of parent. Motherhood has 3 developmental stages, and nobody warned me about this last one. We know our children move through developmental stages. When my kids were young, I studied those stages. I knew when a milestone was coming. I knew when something was age appropriate. What I didn't understand was that I was developing as well. Looking back, I can see 3 distinct phases of motherhood: attachment, autonomy, and finally detachment. This last stage of detachment has completely reordered my understanding of what it means to be a mother. To understand why detachment feels so painful, you have to go back and look at what motherhood asks of us in the beginning. In the beginning, motherhood asks you to become deeply entangled with another human being. Babies are completely dependent upon their mothers for survival. My attachment to my children was both physical and emotional. I wore my babies, I nursed for a long time, we even co-slept for a while. But most importantly, I learned them. I learned each child. I learned what each child needed. I knew when my daughter was about to have a meltdown. I knew when my son needed me to just sit with him and witness him processing an emotion. I could mother each child differently because I knew them. During those early years, I couldn't distinguish my needs from their needs. That deep attachment is not a parenting mistake. It is the work of early motherhood. And then almost imperceptibly, something starts to change. Your child begins to build a life outside of you. The strange gift of middle childhood. That's when your child is becoming his own person and you get to become a whole person again. When children enter school around that time, their interests start to develop. They get friendships, they join sports, they're at school for hours at a time. They still need us tremendously. We regulate, we organize, we advocate, we drive, we help problem solve, but they start having experiences that belong only to them. And for the first time, I had room to ask myself, how am I? What do I want to do with my time? For the first time since becoming a mother, I had room to ask, how am I? What do I like? What kind of work am I interested in? What does my own life look like? Personally, I started a new career. My own autonomy came running back. I call these days the glory days. My children's needs mattered, but my needs became a part of the family as well. And maybe that's why the next stage blindsided me. I thought we were just becoming more independent. I did not understand that my entire role was about to change. There comes a point in motherhood where those skills that made you a good mother in the early years actually damage your relationship with your teenagers. I call this the detachment stage, and I don't mean detachment in like a cute, esoteric way. This is a violent reordering. One day your children want your help, the next day they don't want your opinion. The day after that, they don't even want you to know about their experiences. It can feel like being fired from a job that you love unexpectedly. I was once the foundation, the walls, the container, the ceiling for my children. And then suddenly I was cast aside. And there is no parenting technique that can restore the old relationship. The child has to change and the mother has to adapt. And this is where I think a lot of us get into trouble, because as mothers, our instinct is to try to reattach to our children. When our teenagers pull away, our instinct is to try harder to parent them the way we used to. Something happens, I feel afraid, I want my child to change so that I feel better. So I pull out those old tools. I lecture, I explain, I argue, I punish, I try to persuade, I demand, I beg. And those tools, maybe some of them worked when my children were younger, but adolescence exposes the limits of your authority. The harder I try to regain control, the more secretive my child becomes, and the more distance that's between us. Eventually, I realized I had 2 choices. I could continue to unsuccessfully attempt to reattach and damage the relationship, or I could accept a new reality and build a new relationship. I understood this intellectually for a long time, but then one terrifying afternoon, I had to live it. When my daughter was 16, I discovered exactly how powerless motherhood can make you feel. My daughter had fainted, she hit her head, she had a big gash. We went running to the ER. Doctor recommended blood work, he recommended staples, and my daughter refused it all. In fact, she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I need you to support me here." I did not want to support her. I wanted her to get the blood work. I wanted her to get the staples. In order to get her to do that, I wanted to argue, beg, plead, get angry, threaten. Every maternal instinct told me I had to make her cooperate. But I knew those strategies weren't going to work. And I knew, more importantly, they would damage our relationship. So I looked at her and I said, okay, I will. And then I got up and I started walking around the room, attending to myself and attempting to regulate myself out of that fear. I repeated words to myself that I had not used since my child was an infant. I said, "You're okay, this is hard, but you can handle this." I said this out loud to myself. I discovered the person that I had to manage was no longer my daughter, it was myself. In that moment, I discovered that detachment parenting isn't really about withdrawing from our teenagers, but it's about learning where my responsibility ends. Detachment is not caring less. It's giving up the belief that love gives me control. My daughter had been growing towards independence for years, and I had been in denial of it. I had been attempting to preserve my authority, to maintain my influence. She was becoming developmentally appropriately independent. I was the one who wasn't growing and developing. That realization changed everything. There are 3 stages in motherhood. First, we attach. Our children's needs become intertwined with our own. Second, they develop autonomy. Our children begin building lives of their own, and then we finally get to return to our own lives. Finally, we detach. Not from love, not from connection, but we detach from authority and control. We stop managing every emotion. We stop preventing every painful experience. We also surrender the belief that our child's lives are an extension of our own. Maybe the final developmental task of motherhood is not learning how to hold on to our children, but it's learning how to stay connected, allowing them to completely separate from us. And that requires me to do something, mothers to do something that we haven't done in years: attend to ourselves.